This is Trevor, and I'm for fathers. I'll say it because it's true. When our children are not listening to us, trouble starts to brew. As fathers, it is important to be aware of the signs that our child is consciously choosing not to listen to us, because this is a behavior we want to immediately address. Now, some of these signs may show up when our kid is upset or frustrated, and if that's the case, support them with those feelings first, because they're not going to be able to hear you until they've calmed down, and you're both just going to end up frustrated if you don't. But that being said, here's 5 signs that your child is choosing not to listen to you. Sign number 1, selective listening. You may notice your kid is only paying attention to certain things that you say. If you ask them to turn off the TV and put their toys away before dinner, you might get crickets. Or you might get, "What's for dinner?" Which is a pretty good tell that they heard the whole thing and are only responding to the part that they want to. You're looking for a pattern here. Common topics that are selectively unheard include anything they don't want to do, like responsibilities or chores, and anything they don't want to talk about, like their own misbehavior or the consequences for that behavior. Sign number 2, ignoring instructions. If you've given a clear instruction and your child hasn't responded or has done the opposite, you've got a behavior to address. A quick fix for a lack of response is to calmly say their name and wait until you have their attention. Then ask if they've heard you. If they say yes, communication is confirmed. And if you've had previous conversations about expectations and consequences, everyone should be on the same page as to what will be happening next if they don't do what you've asked. The same obviously goes if your child did choose to outright defy your instructions and to do the opposite of what you've asked. Side note, if you haven't had a concrete conversation about discipline yet, you can grab my free guide in the description below. It lays out what should be covered, as well as 2 other important types of conversations you need to be having. But if your child says no, like they didn't hear you, just repeat it again in the same tone and manner, because maybe they didn't. But we want to do it in the same calm manner because we're not going to be the ones to escalate things with frustration or anger. Sign number 3, constant questioning. Your child may constantly question your instructions or authority, and here's where the dreaded why may be making an appearance. Why do I have to? Why can't you do it? Why can't I do it later? Now, questioning is good. It's a sign of open communication. But if they keep responding to your honest and open answers with more of their own questions, going through the whole entire why Rolodex, then it's a pretty good sign that they're choosing not to listen to you and instead are trying to avoid whatever it is you've asked them to do. Sign number 4, making excuses. Sometimes our kids automatically respond with an excuse. Other times they'll save it for later. I like this though because they're actually engaging with us when they do make the excuse. Now, if it pops up immediately, just actively listen to it and calmly address it right away. And if that excuse is valid, you can change your request. And if it isn't, all you have to do is fall back on your expectations and your consequences that you've already laid out. Now, sometimes they do hold on to that excuse, like a trump card, and they only actually play it when you address the fact that they didn't do what you asked them to do. Bonus tip, this is why it is always important to address this sort of behavior. Because if you don't, you're actually teaching them that ignoring you is the key to getting what they want, which is the exact opposite of what we want here. So at this point, hear them out, actively listen to that excuse, and just like before, determine if you want to change your request. However, a new conversation needs to be had about your child's responsibility to address their concerns with you immediately and directly. This can become a new expectation with an appropriate consequence if not met. Now, if you want more tips like this, subscribe and like below. I've got a whole series on the topic of listening and how to get your child to do more of it. Sign number 5, distracted behavior. If your kid begins to play with a toy or picks up their electronics every time you try to talk to them about something important, they're probably choosing to do that instead of listening to you. There is a note of caution here though. In schools, fidget tools are commonly encouraged now when a child is feeling anxious or just any undesirable feeling, like the one they get when you ask them to put their toys away. So don't assume that they aren't listening. Instead, just check by saying their name, waiting for their attention, then continue. It'll be quite clear after that if they're choosing to listen or not. There are different reasons that our children choose not to listen, and not all of them are a sign that bigger changes need to be made. But some of them are. And the sooner we, as fathers, recognize the difference between a child who is testing boundaries and a child who's actually feeling unheard, the sooner we can start to make those changes, and the sooner our kids will be listening to us once again.